Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Wyant, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Applied Software Grey Tech Group. You're invited to join our conversation to model the future of construction innovation and the digital transformation adventure of this great industry. My guest today is Alain Michalak. He is a senior BIM specialist at PCI with a passion for practicing early architecture techniques and concepts to modern innovative technology. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always like to start with how you got into the industry, and if you want to kind of give a little overview of your role as a BIM specialist at PCI, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so I actually started my educational efforts in 3D animation. This is like early 2000, and kind of left the state, came back, did some army time, and then when I came back to Vegas, I went to a technical school and kind of pursued a CAD degree, and then fell into architecture that way. And then from there, I've been on the design side for the majority of my career, and then I left for a little bit, kind of joined my buddy's little think tank type company, and we were doing cool stuff like VR, augmented reality, some really cool animation projects that we've done. But it's like all this like super high end, like experimental stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I found PCI, and so kind of went from design to the construction side, and I am absolutely thriving. My entire history has been leading me up to this. I was on architecture and structural. Now I'm on the framing side. So it's worked out very well.
Interesting. Talk to me a little bit about kind of your BIM journey, if you will. How has kind of adopting BIM changed the way you approach projects and how you execute at PCI?
Yeah. So obviously I learned a lot on the design side, and so learning the process is there. Kind of gives me an insight to like on the construction side, what can we do? Our branch has only had a BIM entity since I joined, and I've only been with the company for about four and a half years, and so I got to really bring in all my experience and ideas and workflows and kind of apply it to PCI. And once I understood all of our scopes, all of our services, meeting everyone, building rapport and figuring out their backgrounds, then we could really start kind of like sitting down, having very fruitful conversations about, what can my software do? What can my workflows do for the company? The organization as a whole has had been entities and teams and they've done lots of projects, but I think in Vegas, we have a different market, with hospitality and, some of these more complex projects. And so, we had to do things a lot different, sometimes not so drastic, but like, obviously we had to like think outside the box and try new things. And there's a lot of R&D, but having the experience and skill set, I was able to either provide a solution or multiple solutions, get some of my teammates' minds thinking of maybe revisiting the way that they've done business in the past, and how, hey, there's these new tools, we can do things different, faster, safer, more efficient. And so it's kind of like this missing key, I guess you could say, for the branch. And we just kept attacking all these challenges one after the other, and all these projects were huge. So we had more time, more flexibility, more opportunities to really get everything thrown at us, and then come up with solutions to for the client, for the owner, as well as the field crews. It's very important. We make their jobs safer, more efficient. So it was very exciting.
That's awesome. You mentioned something that is interesting. I want to kind of pull on a bit. You mentioned about building rapport, and then kind of the impact of that with the change management of getting people comfortable with the new process and maybe new technology. How'd you go about building that rapport, and what kind of impact did it make on the change management side of things?
Really, like at first is me listening to the conversations, and I was a lot of times I'd be in the actual job trailer, and so I can hear the lingo, I can hear the challenges, the stresses, or stressors, and it was eye-opening in terms of like, hey, this is the other side of the fence, right? I come from design, and you might have heard the phrase like, oh, well, the field will figure it out, or and I'm like, well, hey, that's me. I have to figure it out now, right? And
Right.
so it's like, yeah, the shoe's on the other foot. So seeing my team and the owner and the GCs, all this stuff, have their challenges. I was able to formulate a lot of very helpful solutions and come up with game plans that works for everyone. And I mean, there's been so many different challenges. Like every project, obviously, like anywhere else, they were different. And we'll always, every time we got hit with the challenges, we've always provided a solution. And our goal is to keep the client happy. And then the next big item is like we need to keep our crew safe, right? So you kind of go hand in hand. It's like we can create the most absurd solution, right? It looks great on paper, but hey, that puts one of our field guys at risk. He's 20, 30 feet up in the air. We can't have that, right? So kind of take that information. We have core values. We try to apply to everything we do. So our field guys are very important to us. But the rapport is like talking with them. I give them my number. They come into the trailer. Fist bump every morning. They always come first. They come walking through my front door or to my office door. I drop everything and say, hey, what does the field need, or my superintendent, informants, and then kind of triage from there. It's like, hey, this is my crew. I got to take care of them in any capacity that I can. I'm part of the team and do what I can. So yeah, it took time figuring out, because we're not just framers, right? Like we have hangers and drywallers, painters, guys who specialize in metal panels, and so it took a lot of time to meet everyone first and then try to build a rapport. But once they found out like who I was and my role, they started coming into the trailer, be like, hey, could you just fly me around the model? Could you cut a section here and show me what's going on? They're like, we didn't have this before, and now that we do, we feel like this is very helpful. It'll save time and be safer. So it didn't happen overnight. There's a lot of names I had to learn, a lot of faces, and part of it was during COVID where everyone was covered. So I'm like,
Makes it harder.
from this much information, right? And so it's been a journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's kind of bring in the real world aspect of it. One of the big projects that you guys have done is sitting in the background of you with the Sphere in Vegas. Super cool project. Yep. I got to go to the Sphere at AU. Loved it. Can you share kind of how BIM played a role in this project and any of the unique challenges that it helped to overcome using BIM?
Yeah. So my involvement was actually from the very beginning with our estimating team. And so, like a standard process, they'll give us all the design files, PDFs, et cetera. But we had Revit models to our disposal. So, I think we had like the first go around, right? There's several meetings and iterations, but the first meeting was, take a night, download all the files. Now we're talking gigabytes and gigabytes of file sizes, and put it all together, set up a Navis model just so we can immediately start flying around and sharing with our estimators. But I immediately dove into the architecture model, pulled out all the wall types. We did just simple stuff like 3D view, isolate just the wall types, and then print the screen and say, hey, estimators, this is all your type 1, this is all your metal panels, etc. And so you just kind of have this continuous information being fed to them. And then through Revit, I would generate wall schedules. And so I can take information that was already populated and just very quickly send quantities and whatever information that would be helpful to the estimators in a very quick turnaround time. And not that it's the sole source, but it's always the supplemental, right? It's like, hey, you're doing your thing, you're going through the PDFs, you're in OST, you're doing your takeoffs, you're checking things, but here's what I'm seeing too. And with the Sphere, as complex as it is, you in the early phases of the document set, you don't have every single section, you don't have every single view showing you all the nooks and crannies, and so it was a good set, but we did find like, oh my God, there was conditions that we couldn't easily see. So flying around the model was very helpful. When we did our presentation, we had all these screenshots. We approached third party for some prefabrication help. And so we had this great presentation of just content pulled right out of the model. And so, it was very complex. And that was just like the initial phase, right? It's like then meeting after meeting and the new drawings. A project this size is never just like one and done, right? I think they just hit like revision 210, architectural revision or bulletin, and so it's kind of like, the journey's been very long, and there's a lot of work that went into it. A lot of like our estimators got to hand it to them. They worked very hard, very fair numbers, trying to capture as much information as they could, so they can give a very reasonable price to the owner. MSG had people fly in from New York, from I think the UK, to have meetings with us here in Vegas, and so we try to give them all the information, try to be as transparent, and say, hey, look, this is how we got the information. I think, it was very well received, obviously, because we won the contract. And so it's built now, but it was a lot of planning, a lot of meetings. And they upfront, they said, look, this is going to be a BIM driven job. They saw the value in it. And, a lot of people were on board in terms of the other trades. That level of information always being available, it is very powerful. And I mean, some people can get away with minimal, but I mean, when you had that much available, I mean, we were thinking outside the box, extrapolating information in so many different ways that really benefited us. So it was amazing to see that many files come together.
Yeah, that's cool. How does it change being such a high profile project?
I'm sorry, how does it change?
Does kind of your how you go about it change, or the pressure change, or talk to me kind of about that. There's so much eyes and attention on the Sphere.
Yeah, so it's more about the timeline of it, right? So we built the Allegiant Stadium. Simultaneously, we were building Resorts World Las Vegas, and then and then after that, it was like at some point we were approached to say, hey, can you look at the Sphere project and this and that, and so I don't know if it's the correct language, but it's like, look, we were coming off of two very large projects, and then we were presented this, and we're like, this is nothing like the other two, right? I joke, it's like a giant snow globe. Like, okay, well, how hard could it be, right? And then you realize you're like, wow, I mean, there's so many double curved elements. There's all these, organic shapes and finishing, surfaces, and it's like, okay, yeah, this is gonna take some work and planning. And so, I mean, every project's different, but we looked at this, it was like, this is a truly one of a kind. And I mean, so we never had the doubt. We always had the skill set and the experience to just say, well, how are we going to do this safely? How are we going to do this on time? Again, with the time schedule, we were hit with some of the aftermath of COVID in terms of getting material was super problematic. I mean, it was like 12, 15, 18 weeks to get basic goods that we could before in 2 weeks. And so we had to plan differently, right?
Sure.
And so you take that into effect, you can only be as fast as the distribution side of it will allow it, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like we planned this months ago, and then well, guess what? Like something happened, and now we have to make a change on the fly. And, okay, well now it's another 12 weeks, lead time, and some of them were like, you guys are crazy. You can't get it in such a quick turnaround time. So we had to inform the owner, say, hey, look, these are the challenges of this job. Is like, this is the world we live in, right? Post COVID.
Right.
So
right.
Those are the biggest challenges.
Yeah, interesting. So I want to kind of pivot into the technology realm. I know kind of pushing software to its limits is a passion of yours. How did you leverage software, like Structsoft MWF for the Sphere project, or other initiatives at PCI?
Yeah. So the first challenge was always storage. How are we going to store all these files? I had to get a second hard drive for my laptop, just to kind of keep things on reserve, very, so quick access items. But I mean, at one point we were laser scanning, so we had these these huge files, trying to manage that. But the owner in the beginning, we tried Ignite as a platform to just share the models and the content. Then we switched to ACC, and internally, obviously in a collaborative environment for Revit, we use ACC. So it was kind of like you just had two accounts to toggle between. But I mean, hardware wise, like we were prepared with the two previous big projects, so like hardware we were good, but um, our organization has always in some form, but like for the longest time, they've always had access or trained individuals who use MWF. So we always say it's kind of like the West Coast and the East Coast, but like the West Coast folks have used MWF for maybe over 8-10 years, et cetera, maybe longer, but for a long time. And yeah, we look at other solutions, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, we've used MWF, especially in the Las Vegas branch.
How did that kind of influence the Sphere project?
Again, like how I mentioned, the double curved elements, that was very challenging. But the overall sheer size of the model, right? Like you take into account how many walls there were, how many soffit elements and ceilings. And at first they're like, hey, you're onboarded. Here's the models. We need you to start populating as quickly as possible. You have like 2 weeks. And I'm like, no, I can't populate the whole project in 2 weeks. I mean, just the sheer hardware processing power required. I mean, you're talking like every, stud and track. It's like, geez, like, yeah, I don't have the hardware, or probably doesn't exist, but like, yeah. There's a lot of content. So we told them, it's like, look, it's going to be one of those progressive things. We'll stay on track with schedule, but this is how it's done. Like, because if you look at traditional method of just Revit, no plugin, no third party help, it's a slow process because it's not really designed for like a framing contractor in particular. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is because we also had other scopes. Like we modeled installation. Beyond the immersive surface, there's just a big pattern array of different thicknesses of insulation panels. Like you guys don't see it when you're obviously seeing a show, but we modeled that. And the dome roof steel structure, we modeled in Revit, and we basically did all these pie shapes for the insulation, different layers, and then flattened it all out for shop drawings, and then basically gave like a panel cutting information to our field. And we have all these amazing photos of like these stacked, all these pre-cut panels. You got flown into the location or transported to the top, and they put it in very quickly, very safe. Everything's all pre-planned. But yeah, like there's a lot of programs that struggle with that type of feature where it's radial or if it's a dome. But the double curve, like we couldn't do everything in MWF or Revit, but we reached out to Radius Track. And because of the post-COVID information I mentioned earlier, since they can prefabricate or manufacture, they also can get their own material. So if they have the spools, they can make their own material. So it was like we actually saved time because they already had the material on hand, and so they would just bend it and form it and whatnot. And we would have all these kits that we would install in the field. And so the dynamic was we had these 3D models of their content. And trucking information and sequencing and shop drawings, and we did all this cool stuff. But then the Revit model with MWF, I was framing the ceilings where it would tie into, and so it was like multiple simultaneous efforts going on at the same time. Like they're doing their thing, I'll link it into my model, and I'm trying to connect, and I'm finding all the like little gaps, trying to make sure everything's good and finalized, and then. After that, I would generate like a little report of like spot coordinates. So I can then translate it to the field. Our layout team can put on the ground X and Y, and then sometimes like a Z information of where things need to land. And so it was very successful. Whereas traditional methods would take a really long time of tape measuring, checking your dimensions, all the time. We had robotic layout. And we maximize it, and a really skillful layout team. We put them through the ringer on the stadium, and results roll. So it's like they were very well prepared. It's just we tried new techniques. So yeah, like MWF was like my core program, and I would get the bulk of it done. But where I needed help, like we just happened to have already a third party in place. So it was a very very interesting. It worked out very well, and I'm very happy for the field and the owner.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, let's take a step back. How do you really go about selecting new software to experiment with, and kind of what's the process like for integrating successful tools into your kind of everyday workflow?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll just be like a huge nerd and like I'll just be at home on my free time, just looking up new stuff,
Yeah.
or like I have a hard time turning things off when it comes to the project. I'll just be late at night, but like, how do I mean, there's got to be another way of doing things, right? Like constantly asking the why, or how. It's like, I mean, I love Dynamo, but don't have a lot of time to get into it. I know there's a lot of scripts out there. So part of it also is the available time. The Sphere took up a lot of my time. We had a specific time every day. We had to submit our model for the day so that the next morning people can see the latest and greatest. So my day started early because we're in construction, and then it would end late because I also have to make sure I'm available for our engineer. We hired Ficcadini, Wagner, and Castle. They have an office here in Vegas. So Neil was our engineer. He ends his day at 5 or 6, and he might have questions, and so trying to be available to him as well as the field in the morning. So long days, but if I catch wind of something, or even just being in the industry so the on site there was a trailer with all the other BIM folks or representative from each subcontractor. Mm-hmm. A lot of very helpful information could be had from them. Like they see stuff on other projects that they're also working on, and they bring to the table just tons of experience. And so, during lunch, I might go over there and just hang out with them because I'm in the trailer, just a couple hundred feet away. But it's like, hey guys, you guys seen something like this before? And they'll tell me some things that they've seen. But for the most part, we were not want to say on our own, but like, we were doing things that are kind of like either new or just, very complex. So we were, coming up with new ways to do things. But in general, I mean, it's just keeping your ear to the ground, always being curious, like, what's a better way of doing things that would take hours of clicking, I mean, unless you want carpal tunnel, I'm like, you can continue doing things the old way, so.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you manage and balance the incoming demands and shifting priorities from all the different stakeholders and partners that you're collaborating with on a project the size and scale of the Sphere?
Yeah, I mean, in general, like when people say it's a BIM-driven job, like you guys realize the owner's paying for the BIM effort, right? Like the BIM folks and their skill set and their capabilities. And it's like, it's almost like triaging the project, right? It's like, hey, who needs the information first? What can wait? What's critical? What's not critical? And things like that. But I just have my 1 cup of coffee a day, and
that's a big mug.
It is.
It's a good big mug.
So yeah, it depends on the day. Some days can throw you. I mean, when you're not prepared, like they can go sideways very easily. Mm-hmm. But you just my GM always says, how hard could it be? It's just walls and ceilings, guys. Like don't make it harder than it needs to be. But you look at the priority of like who needs the information now, yesterday, a week from now, as well as maintaining schedule, because there's a lot of moving parts. But as a company, as an organization, we try to keep our clients happy and the owner, GCs and the owner, and then we just kind of keep it simple. I think when you start making things more complex than it really needs to be, then you kind of get lost in that chaos. And you've got to write things down. I had a huge whiteboard that I was, putting stuff. We use OneNote to communicate within the operations team. And I mean, I try to document it as much as possible. We had meetings every week for BIM. So, I could share all that information with my team very quickly on demand as the information was coming in. So as close to real-time information was kind of the goal. But just, in general, you want to document things so you can always go back and, if you have a minute to clear up any doubt you might have, it's like, oh yeah, well, I satisfied everything I wanted to for the day, and I can move on to other new items. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Where do you see the role as kind of BIM specialists evolving to, especially given the rapid technological advancements that are coming into the industry? How do you see the role changing over the next few years?
I mean, I think it's always a mindset, right? Like if you're going to get into BIM, I mean, it's not going to be somebody who just, thinks of gardening all day long, right? It's you have to want to be into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, my team, we do laser scanning, right? And, we're literally like start to end solution. Even when it comes to like, doing animations, if you wanted to, and if you want to do a VR, we can do a lot of stuff because we have that mindset, right? And yeah, I mean, in the future, there's always going to be new technologies, but all they do is become tools, right? And so the tools are only as good as its user, or however well developed the tools are at the time. But you have to also be involved, right? Like you have to give feedback to the developers or to the creators and say, hey, look, I'm in the field and I'm using your product or your tool. This is what I'm seeing. This is where it's good. This is where it's bad. But it would never get back to them if you don't say something, right? If you don't reach out. That's why going to like Autodesk University is a great place to meet people and kind of like, hey, I have 10 minutes. I just want to let you know the product's great, but and then drop the hammer on them, right? Just kind of blind them. But
yeah. It's providers love that feedback though. That's super beneficial. It's really helpful to them.
Yeah, and it gets the job done in terms of like, hey, I said my piece, and then I can move on and harass the next vendor or something. But it's I think you have to share your experiences, or otherwise, like, we won't grow as a collective. So one person puts in a little bit of effort, and another and another and another. Before you know it, it's like, hey, we just turned the software in a 1 year time span. This turned into like a leaps and bound better, improved tool. So nothing's perfect now, and obviously like everyone's working to do better. Otherwise, like, why even continue, right? So moving forward.
Yeah, nice. Well, kind of keeping our eye on the future. How is PCI approaching recruiting efforts, especially helping to bring in the next generation of talent into BIM and construction roles?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, like I was kind of the first of like BIM department for Las Vegas. We always talk, as a whole, we talk about succession plans, the next future. I'm not the young spry chicken that can work all hours of the day like I used to. As I get older, I'm like, hey, I'm not so much worried about competition. I'm more focused on mentorship. Like, hey, I've put a lot of time into this industry. It's time I give back. And so it's like, hey, for my organization, like my team is actually helping with recruitment efforts. And so like twice a year I go to BYU Idaho. They have a VDC program. They have great instructors. Got a chance to meet them. But as a company, as a framing and drywall company, it's like, hey, as a student, you're probably getting pushed to work for a GC, but just know that there's life on the subcontractor side. School's not going to teach you everything about how to model or do VDC content for a framing and drywall company, but we are looking for people with a mindset and, people who are like hungry and want to learn and just genuinely want to be in the industry. It's like, hey, like PCI is a very strong candidate. We've got an ESOP program and we got all these, cool bells and whistles. And it's like, we go there to tell them, show them, give them updates on what we've been doing, projects we've completed, showing them, like, hey, this is how we use the tool. Like you're probably learning the basics, this is more advanced stuff. And so we're not with them day to day, but we do the recruitment events to kind of remind them, like, hey, as you're getting closer to graduation, like, just know, like, hey, you don't have to work in certain companies or types of fields. Like, hey, there's PCI, and we do this and that. And so awareness, but also, they've come back and said kind of more like general questions, like, hey, like I'll be starting out, like, what can I expect? And so, we try to be professional and tell them, like, look, yeah, you want to do your best. You want to have a great attitude, learn everything you can, but always be creative and thinking outside the box. And so it's like, we leave them with, hey, if you get stuck, you can reach out to us, our recruiter, and your instructors. Well, we're trying to build relationships. We may not have all your answers, but at least, that we're out there to help. And so I've been doing this for about 2 years now. We get a lot of strong feedback from the students. Ideally, I would hire I would be looking at students in the architecture program or the structural engineering program. But they're definitely heavily influenced to join the design side, right? And so I think more exposure of companies like PCI is like, hey, there's life on the other side of the fence, and so maybe it's taboo, maybe it's uncertainty. I think once you start tearing away those barriers, they're like, oh wow, like there is more opportunity out there, and so that we're trying to bring awareness to that, and maybe we plant the seed today. Eventually these freshmen grow, the ideas grow, and they spur thoughts of like, hey, I do want to check out PCI when I graduate. When I graduate, I definitely want to check out those markets that they're heavily involved in. We're involved in tech. We're involved in, some of these large, we got marine, we got, God, there's so many things that products that we have. And so it's like, yeah, the United States is huge. Like, there's a lot of opportunity, and without, telling them and having the conversations, building rapport, right? They're not going to know. And so, a good candidate could very easily have been missed because they just want to stay in one spot because they had no idea that I could go to Las Vegas and work for PCI or Seattle and do all these cool things, and so it's been challenging in that they're comfortable, right? And it's like, hey, when you graduate you might have to move, and so there's those challenges that it's at the independent level, but they know we're around. We're hard to miss, right? So,
yeah. What's kind of the response that you've been getting from kids as they start to kind of get their eyes opened that there's more options out there? Or are they asking certain questions, or are they, jumping on it quicker? Or how have you seen that evolve over the last 2 years?
Well, I think in Vegas in particular, I don't know if it's like I don't know how it spreads, but the taboo of like, oh, you're gonna go to Vegas and you're gonna be a gambler or an alcoholic, and it's like, stop. We're a regular city. We just happen to have a huge entertainment corridor. Yet we cater to hospitality, all this stuff, but we have cool stuff. Like, there's life. We don't live in Caesar's Palace, right? We don't live at the Mandalay Bay.
I thought that was all in Vegas. Come on.
I live at the top of the stratosphere. I got a great,
there you go.
yeah, big penthouse. But no, and the students like, they love the pitch, they love the message we're sending. But they're bombarded with so many companies as well, right? And so at face value, when 100 companies tell you we're the greatest, we're the best, we have these amazing opportunities and perks, how do you choose, right? And so some of it is that it's a personal journey. We would love to have all these great candidates, but at the same time, we can't force them to be happy. They have to want to be there, be with us. Because we really hire for longevity, right? We invest in our people. They hear about our safety record, right? And we have one of the lowest EMR ratings in the nation. And so that's important when they're getting degrees in project engineering or, project management, and our VDC people, they're like, hey, PCI like really stresses like safety, right? It's like, hey, like, let's look into that. And so, you go down the rabbit hole and they're like, wow, PCI's won awards for safety. And, a lot of GCs favor us because of our commitment to our field and safety. So, I think it's more challenging for the students to decide, because we're here, we're available to provide answers to any questions they have, show them firsthand. We have an internship program. We just started for Vegas. We just started a BIM internship program last year. So it's like, hey, even if it's just 2 weeks, try leaving the school for your internship and spend time with us, get to know our people. And then if it doesn't work out, fine. But at least that the seed has been planted, I guess, is the moral of the story. It's an ongoing effort and challenging.
Yeah, makes sense. So as we start to kind of land the plane here, I got a couple rapid fire questions for you. So first, what is modeling the future? What does that mean and look like to you?
Oh my God. like it's such a huge wish list, but it's like I just want these to be faster and reliable, right? Like we're dependent on the internet because of cloud hosted platforms, right? I literally lost like 2 or 3 days working on the Sphere because nothing of our doing, but someone down the street was doing work in this, messing with the communication lines underground, and the whole building cut out. Like I had no internet. So I'm like, oh my God, like how am I supposed to, like working off a hotspot is not going to happen when it comes to the sheer size of projects. So the hardware, yeah, obviously it's getting faster and faster. We use laptops so we can mobilize and hit the job site whenever whenever called. But it's like, things are a lot better than they were, 5-10 years ago. But, we do laser scanning and we need that processing speed. We need, just gobs of RAM that can handle it all. And it's like, things are better, but in the future, I do see, collaboration is just going to get easier and faster. Trying to load things on a browser. Yeah. Some days are good, some days are bad, but it's, kind of like that necessary evils. Like, well, it is, the internet, it is what it is, but Vegas isn't like even big on like fiber optic. Like it's still emerging and growing and where it's available. But it's like, okay, well, after that, it's like, what's the next milestone of speed that can be had, right? And since we're all going to be in the cloud, some companies have policies where you can't have a physical server, so you're limited there. But software, Revit's kind of, it came out a long time ago, right? And there's new techniques of writing code and new engines for displaying your 3D model, so I think there's going to be more integrations. I think there's going to be a lot more advancements, definitely from people who are just curious and trying to figure out new ways to do things. It'll take time, but I mean, the way everything's going, a lot of it is just integration, jumping from one platform to the other, and then, getting information to your team faster. I think if I can get information to the field more efficiently, that'd be amazing, because we use iPads for a lot of our, we give them to our foremen to kind of like look at models, look at plan grid, and et cetera. But on the Sphere, for example, like underground and all that concrete and connection was very hard to come by, right? And so you're like, hey, did you get my model or did you get my CAD file? And they're like, no. I was like, okay, well, you need to step outside then. You need to go outside the building, come to ground level, and then download, and then go back but that's lost time, right? Yeah. So it's like, it's always gonna be a hardware thing. It's always gonna be a software thing. They go hand in hand. But I know we're so information hungry. We want to consume and consume as much as we can as quickly as possible. And I think the industry is just, they're aware and, they're moving towards that. But I think it's we're on the right path. There's a lot of modeling software. I think when these unique designs and concepts come into play, they're like, hey, I wish I had a tool, like a specific maybe Revit function or something. That's where Autodesk can respond and be like, hey, we've been working on that as well, or we've had many comments and feedback from customers that say they want this and that. And so collectively, right, like we're all contributing, and so it's getting better. It's becoming more efficient, but it still takes time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what does innovation mean to you?
It's one thing to be innovative and then say you're doing it, but I think it always comes down to like, you have to know the tools first, right? So having the people who are very like confident with the tools, know it very thoroughly, very experienced, that's the first barrier, right? It's like, we can have a whole department that's innovative, but if your individual people don't have the skills and the tools, you're only as successful as they're going to be. So, people that have the mindset of, how can we do things different? Asking the questions like, why don't we simplify? Why don't we do this? And then you realize like innovation is really just about, making it easier on each other and, getting things done faster. Like I don't want to work late nights. Like how can I, save myself? So maybe it's, the notion of being a little bit selfish, right? You're like, hey, I want a full weekend. I don't want to spend 4 hours checking my model and doing things and doing late night requests. Let's be selfish a little. Like how do we get these done faster?
Yeah.
And so innovation really comes down to is like, faster, efficient, safer. Like there's so many ways we could be, framing a soffit or maybe a whole wall assembly, right? But when, you have guys that are cantilevered out, what we feel is too far, or, we have to put in all this extra equipment and, we try to avoid, ladders and, we have to be innovative. So like maybe it's a comment you hear from somebody you didn't even think about, right? Just a guy walking by, or let's say like a carpenter. He's like, hey, kind of wouldn't mind if there's like an extra foot or an extra inch long. You're like, hey, that's a great idea. Let's incorporate that, right? So keeping the ear open and just listen to, your teammates, listen to your client, listen to like, yeah, we kind of have been doing this the same way forever and ever, or maybe we've been doing it for a short while, but can it be done faster? Can it be done differently? Yeah, don't like not being afraid to try new things, I think is going to be really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I more than agree with that. How do people find out more information and connect with you?
Okay, so you can reach out to our website, performancecontracting.com, but we have a section just for Las Vegas. And so like we have tons of content like, specifically tailored to our branch. But I am on LinkedIn, very easy to find actually, because kind of unique first and last name. So yeah, I mean, I'm on there fairly often. And yeah, I mean, like I said, like I like the idea of mentoring more now than trying to compete with everyone. It's like, I've done this for a long time. So like, yeah, I'm open to messages and, one-off questions, it doesn't bother me, but yeah, I'm approachable. I know business days are long, or times can get busy, it's up and down, but I try to respond whenever I can, and I'm really looking forward to building relationships.
Awesome. Well, final question for you. If I could give you all power, you could snap your fingers and innovate one thing in the construction industry, what would you pick to innovate?
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. What's important to me lately really has just been my field. Like, hey, how do I get the information to my crew, right? And make things easier for them. I mean, they've been pretty happy, with being able to approach us. But I mean, yeah, there's so many different ways and challenges, and in general, I just want to see them be more successful by having information at their fingertips faster, no lag, no load times, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my focus, is my field.
Yeah, I like it. Well, thanks so much for taking the time and joining the show today and having the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great.